Good morning, Abhishek. It is Tuesday. Yeah, I'm recording inside today. It's just a bit more. It's a bit darker than I would like it to be, and the light outside is not good at all. So it's just better to record here than you have me look at, I don't know, freaking 480p quality video. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway, I did have a look at the video about your discussion about special relativity and time dilation, and it's actually really interesting. It's really great to know that you understood this from the ground up. I remember I had this some kind of textbook. I think it was H.C. Verma. Oh, yeah, how could I forget that? Yeah, where it had a chapter for special relativity as well. I think not special relativity, but like something related to that. I'm not exactly sure what it was, but it talked about time dilation and things like that as well. And uh, I think it was a chapter that was just ignored because it was not in the syllabus, and there was no reason people would look at it. But I, I don't know. So I just found myself reading that chapter, and I actually went through the math back then, and went through how time dilation works and how that leads to length contraction, things like that. And yeah, I mean, the only reason I know the terms a bit more than I normally would is because of that book. I think I haven't really read a lot more about it than that book, so I would definitely love to read that book someday. Six not so easy pieces, as he calls it, Richard Feynman. So yeah, that would be fun. That would be fun, definitely. And today's topic, I guess, kind of relates to what I have had, what I want to say, but not really. Uh, I wanted actually to talk about survivor bias. A bit of context is that I have actually been coming back to podcasts a bit more because since I moved back here, I've generally been working most of my time. 9 to 5, 9 to 6. I've been working, and then I meet up with friends, and so I don't really have a lot of time to listen to podcasts other than when I'm cooking and I'm alone, or I'm walking around when I'm alone, which is generally not the case. That like it used to be. Back in college, I used to walk around a lot. By myself, going and coming back from college, and couple other things, I guess. Meetings for the venture accelerator and things like that. I used to have a lot more time before to listen to podcasts. But anyway, I digress. I've started listening back to podcasts again, and one of the ones that I've really picked up this time is this one called "How I Built This" by Guy Raz, something like that. That it's a really old podcast, actually. I think it's one that I remember since I entered Nirma, I think. Yeah, so 2015, and it's actually been much older than that as well. Actually, it was quite old at that point, so it's been a long time ago. So yeah, it's a really good podcast. It's actually essentially about how a person builds this company, either all by himself or as a co-founder. But it's a couple of people who made it, and either one of them are there, or some of them, or all of them. You know, and yeah, I think I've been through podcasts like Dell computers, and uh, I don't know, Logic even. So here's a fun little fact. Logic actually went through his own, of course, career of making himself. He didn't have a history of music before himself, right? So it was not in his family, so he just picked it up by himself, and whatever he knew about it. But also the manager that he worked with, since the first album, and I think forever since, has been uh, a guy that actually started managing in the music business for the first time as well. So I think it was both of them were like 21, 22, and they both started their careers with this, and yeah, they're both where they are right now. So Logic's creative prowess, as well as uh, Chris Zaru, if I'm not wrong. Yeah, Chris. I mean, I'm really gonna say this name wrong. So I don't want to do that, but yeah, then it's just a guy named Chris Zaru, and they're both yeah kind of responsible for what Logic is today. So that's pretty fun. And yeah, as I was just saying, the reason for why I mentioned that podcast really is because there was this, uh, you know, uh, these companies, when once you start listening about how they were made and how they were discovered, things like that. So like there was also Coinbase and Robinhood and Lynda.com and like all these different companies that we all know about. That I heard those episodes and try to understand how they did things the way they did. And very quickly I kind of realized a fundamental problem that podcast, at least before I listened to Lynda.com's episode. So yeah, it's really just the problem of survival bias. You kind of keep listening to these stories again and again, and there are a lot of times when these co-founders keep telling you about how people didn't believe in us, but we kept going, or these ideas were crazy, and we had nobody really thought that we were going to make it, and people were not ready to invest in us, or things like that. And then they ended up doing something incredible, and and then they were where they were. Of course, I'm kind of generalizing here and trying to boil it down into a minute's worth of discussion, but uh, that was essentially the idea for a lot of these episodes. And I realized that that was uh, showing this survivor side of making a business, making a startup, and making it out there in the world. Of course, I have started my own startup with Smith, and it's been going great as well. We've started again. And well, the reason I bring out my startup is because it's been, I think, we started back in 2019 end, so it's been more than 2 years since we started that. And I mean, of course, it's not seen the success that people would think. That people we start working on some product, and within 6 months we have some kind of product market fit, and then we have some kind of pre-seed funding round, and we get a couple of investors from the US, probably from Silicon Valley, and then we start building it from there, and such and such. But that didn't happen. We kind of took our different paths, and that's kind of a different story as well, what we did. But the idea is that the reason why I bring up my own startup is because uh, it's not very it's not always this entire story of people didn't believe in me, or people didn't believe in us, and we still kept going and going, and somehow it all worked out and things like that. This kind of serves this one-sided story, which is of course true. I mean, still we have ideas that we are still working on, and it's a part of this process of understanding what we want to deliver versus what the public wants, versus creating something that people don't even know they want, kind of. Of course, with this entire iPhone revolution, I mean, people had smartphones before that, and there were touch smartphones before that, but iPhone is the one that created this entire revolution. They kind of made the phone popular. The same way Geo kind of commoditized the 4G internet, and commoditized internet, really just brought it to everyone at such a low price. Now they're bringing it back up, of course, but the kind of thing to understand is that people are now more connected to the internet than they ever were before. And yeah, that's kind of these are things that you hear about successful companies, but you have to keep understanding that the idea behind doing something like that, and doing something like that right, is really difficult to do. And it sometimes becomes difficult to realize what flaws a company has before it goes public or popular, before people start understanding what they're doing. So for example, I mean, it's great to say that you know uh, I don't know, like for companies like Apple did what they did or Samsung did what they did, But people forget that Nokia and BlackBerry were big in their own times, And as soon as smartphones came, they tried fitting in, but uh, I guess they made some mistakes along the way, but they never really fit, and they kind of died down. Nokia still makes phones. BlackBerry also still kind of makes phones. I think the last one that I remember was the BlackBerry Priv, but yeah, they are not no longer in the picture, are they? I mean, they're not no longer the front runners. They're not. They're kind of like the Haas of the 2021 FNCs, you know. Uh, and yeah, just the point that I'm trying to make here is that there are a lot of companies that fail. If there's a succeeding company, if there's one succeeding company from its birth till 5 years. So here's something that Robert Kiyosaki said in his book Rich Dad Poor Dad, if you remember, was uh, 1 out of 10 companies, sorry, 1 out of 5, or it was 1 out of 10 companies that succeed, that don't succeed, but they survive their first 5 years, and 1 out of those surviving companies survive the next 5 years. So in within 10 years, you only see 1 out of 100 companies that succeeded, you know. And out of those, not a lot come on a podcast like this. Of course, they've been trying to cover as many companies as they can, but that's just not their fault. It's just they can't really cover something like this. And even if there were multiple podcasts that would cover, or multiple YouTube channels, or books that would cover everything about so many companies, it's really difficult to cover all the successful companies, let alone all the companies that ever tried to exist, all the good companies that ended up failing. I mean, let's not even talk about companies that were bad, with an idea that was never really gonna achieve something. So yeah, it's kind of this survivor bias that is kind of inbuilt with podcasts, or YouTube channels or books like these, where they talk about successful companies and what they did right, and what how they avoided the wrong things. But it's not really very perfectly clear when you're standing yourself, in that fog of uncertainty, uh, as Gray puts it. Yeah, that. In the fog of uncertainty that you were standing right now in the present, you can't really look into the future and know how things are going to turn out. It's very easy to talk about things in hindsight and look at things. So yeah, it's just something to keep in mind, is this survivor bias that people tend to have when discussing these successful companies. And the reason for why I mentioned Linda was a kind of an exception, was because, I mean, their goal might have been to get acquired, or it might not have been, but in the end they got acquired by LinkedIn, and they rebranded themselves as LinkedIn Learning. So I remember, in I think back in school, I think we were in the ninth or 10th grade, when it was called, when there was this these two websites, Udemy and lynda.com, that had these, but essentially they were these brands that would have these, that were known for their courses, that uh, you could go online and have these courses for you on demand, and they would also have tests, things like that. So it was kind of built on top of this idea of a YouTube playlist, or a YouTube channel, where it's also made to have documents that you can read, reference books, or maybe some kind of notes, or and also have some quizzes on top of that. And they were what they were. But the idea was that, the idea is that I think it was 2015 or 2016 when LinkedIn acquired Linda, and they kind of went away. So the co-founders sold the company, and they never were a crucial part of that company. After they sold it, they went away. They didn't keep working with it. And of course, LinkedIn used it in the right way as well. They kind of built LinkedIn Learning into what it is right now, and it is a good service, definitely. Yeah. And but the reason why I mention it is because that is a company that didn't go the success route as everybody would call it. Maybe for them it was a success to get acquired, and for other people it's sometimes it's not the goal to get acquired, and they did kind of fail that way. But they ended up selling their company, and they ended up creating this value in Linda that was still, which was still in fact valuable, but it was not enough to grow by themselves, so they had to sell it to someone else who in theory could build it much better, and that's what they did. And that's a kind of more of a grayer episode than usual. Coinbase or Snapchat or Dell has a much more of a black and white story where people who are against them, and this idea of having messages disappear after 24 hours, or being able to uh, invest in crypto and have your own crypto wallet, or you know yeah, all these ideas seemed pretty crazy back then, and they still ended up working on them. One of my favorites is the Airbnb. Sometimes I can't wrap my head around the fact that people host their own houses to other people, so that they can live, instead of renting hotels, they rent out houses, which is really strange. I mean, yeah, that's again a topic of a completely separate discussion. But yeah, that's really what I think. So Linda is a much more of a grayer episode that they had, and it was really interesting to listen to what they had to say, how they kind of approached things, how they decided how to do things, and it was a much I've personally felt that it was a much better story to listen to, and get to know of their shortcomings, get to know of their successes as well, and understand how they grew to the point that they grew to, and then why they decided to sell it off to LinkedIn. You know. And yeah, this is really the kind of uh, point that I want to talk about. That if there are a lot of companies that made it successful and had stories written about them, you have to kind of understand that there have been a lot more companies, orders of magnitude more companies that have failed behind them, you know and not just failed miserably, but like failed quietly, kind of. Maybe Yahoo is a similar example as well. Finance.yahoo.com is still alive, but Yahoo used to be a search engine, believe it or not, and it also used to have a chat messenger, believe it or not. So yeah, that's really the kind of point I wanted to talk about. That always keep in mind that there are things to be considered. There are biases to be thought of when you look at someone or something that is successful. And this kind of is connected to your topic. I did say in the beginning that it was, and the reason for that is there always are a lot of scientists working in their own fields, but the only ones that we listen to, that the ones that we know about, are the ones that end up making the discovery that they do. That it's the I don't really remember the equation that they had. There was this one equation. I think it's called. Uh, yeah, I'll just have the equation name, and I guess the equation itself down, either in the description or the video here. But that equation was, I think, one of the founding stones of what the Richard Feynman's theory of, uh, I think it was called the quantum field theory. Yeah, that's right. That was, and we know him from being this person that completely changed quantum physics, and he tried to, he is this professor as well who was really good at uh, things that he did. But yeah, that's we know him for being this, but there were a lot of scientists based on what his work was based on. Essentially, he built on top of these scientists' work, and because he ended up with a great theory that was a lot more unifying than the other scientists' theories, they're the ones that are in the spotlight. And yeah, that's really a kind of hook into the previous video as well. I'll admit it's not the best one that I've had, but yeah, it just goes to show that there is kind of this survivor bias hooked into almost anything that you see around you. You know, there are a lot of different. I mean, uh, before iPods, there used to be Zunes. I remember if correctly. Uh, Microsoft had a Zune. Was it Microsoft? I don't remember. Wow. But yeah, no one knows about Zunes. Everyone knows about iPods, you know. So they were essentially the same product. But yeah, so you have to know that iPod succeeded, but Zune failed, and you have to know why the iPod succeeded just as much as you should know how and why Zune failed. So yeah, that's really the idea that I wanted to put here. I realized that this has become a 20-minute video. Wow, this is a much longer video than I expected it to be. But let me know what you think. I might trim some parts down in this video. I might not. I think this is a really good one-shot video, so I'll just end this here, and I will see you on Friday. Bye.